All right, well, thanks everybody for coming along. I'm going to jump the queue here and just give a very quick update on this season's pupping and how many there's been, and then we'll let Annie take over and you can listen to what you really came for. Right, so in terms of mainland pups, many of you will be aware that we passed 35 for the first time. That's for the Dunedin area. We've passed 35 for the first time. Reasonable numbers, so 9 down in the Catlins as well, but unfortunately 6 of those have died this season. So it's after several years of all of the pups being killed by a rogue male, we now have a number of pups that have died from a variety of other reasons. So so in terms of survival, they're still not doing that well down there, but pretty good up here. Hopefully 4 more years of 35 or more pups and we'll have a breeding colony, which would be nice. Mel? All right. So Stewart Island, very similar to last season in terms of numbers caught and tagged, so just under 100. And I just put the red dot there to show that's essentially where Dunedin is now, so 38. So if you give us another 10 years, and we should be pretty close to 100 pups a year, which is exciting or scary, depending on your point of view. And then finally, Sub-Antarctic, when I put this together, the numbers hadn't officially been released, but they are very similar to last year. So as you can see, still below the threshold where it's supposed to trigger, so the red line, oh, we've got a laser pointer here somewhere. No, I don't want to push the wrong button. Hey, there we go. So we've got a red line here. So that's, if numbers drop below that, pup numbers drop below that, then it's supposed to trigger a review of the management of the squid fishery, but I suspect because there's no longer a malform on that, that probably it's not going to change anything. But yeah, so it's, numbers in the Sub-Antarctic haven't come back up after the latest drop. They seem to have hit another plateau, so not doing great down there. Sorry to end on a bum note. Right, we'll now pass on to Annie. Sorry.
Maybe you should.
Too late now. Button on the top.
Thanks for that. Kia ora, I'm Annie. I'm from the Ōtautahi Peninsula, so I grew up with sea lions at my back doorstep. Felt very privileged, and they've kind of formed a big foundation of my identity, and thus I guess my career has sort of followed that direction as well. So I'm a vet. I graduated in 2021 from Massey, and yeah, I've had a bit of a varied career so far. Moved straight to Tasmania after finishing vet school and joined a busy mixed practice over there, working with large animals, small animals, and a big wildlife caseload as well. Working from Tasmanian devils to pelicans to all sorts of weird and wonderful creatures. But I guess my loyalty to New Zealand taonga brought me back here, and for the past 3 years I've been doing a wildlife pathology residency back at Massey. What is that exactly? It's essentially Dr. Death. So that's figuring out why species are reaching their demise and trying to find ways to prevent that from happening. It can be quite morbid at times, lots of maggots, lots of smelly decomposed whales and sea lions and, you know, kiwi that are almost incomprehensibly a kiwi, just bag of bones essentially. But from that we can, even from, you know, a bag of bones, we can see, you know, tooth marks and measure the distance between the tooth marks, and that may or may not indicate, you know, if it's a stoat or a cat or that sort of thing. So we can tell a lot from a dead body, and through forming a partnership with the Department of Conservation, we report back on those findings, and that helps influence management changes and prevent these from happening. So I guess that's my passion. It's kind of not where I saw myself as a child, but it's where I am now. And so I've been asked to come and talk to you guys a bit about avian influenza, and I feel a bit daunted about that topic because it's pretty morbid and it's not good news. And I'm trying to find a way to put a positive spin on it, but I'm struggling. And I'm also aware that I'm not a virologist. I'm not. There's probably people in this audience that are a lot more qualified to talk on this matter, but from a disease point of view or a pathology point of view, I'll give you my 2 cents worth. So yeah, avian influenza, it's a disease that's been hanging around in the I guess biosphere for quite a while. I think it was first noted in the 1800s or something like that. But as viruses do, they grow, they evolve, and either they become more pathogenic or they become less pathogenic. And in the case of this one, it is definitely becoming more pathogenic, and that's why it's called HPAI, Highly Pathogenic Avian Influenza. As the name suggests, it impacts birds, but it also has been found to impact a wide variety of species and percolating through into your domestic species. So as you'd imagine, the poultry is a big one, and large economic losses associated with that. But they're also finding that it's impacting cows. They've had reported cases in the US, and then also obviously wildlife. Historically, it's been a disease that infects things like waterfowl, but recently it's been crossing into seabirds, and that's a big issue because seabirds travel big distances, and it's allowing that regions that wouldn't have been at risk to become at risk. It also can infect people. It's hard to catch, but it is, if you do catch it, it is a high mortality rate. So it is something on the human health aspect that we do need to be aware of, especially as wildlife professionals working with these species. So what does it look like? It causes, as you'd imagine, with flu, respiratory symptoms. So swelling around the head and neck, they're quite lethargic, coughing, nasal discharge. If in the case of a chicken, the wattle up here can get quite blue, which indicates poor oxygen perfusion. And then also they get gastrointestinal signs as well, so things like diarrhea. The fecal oral route is a way that it can be transmitted between species, and it can last quite long in the environment in that respect, up to 200 days in one paper that I read. You'll hear references of low pathogenic and high pathogenic avian influenza. As you'd imagine, the low pathogenic form, often the birds will survive. It's not as transmissible. It only really affects the respiratory system and the gut. But the highly pathogenic avian influenza can impact a whole variety of organ systems and has much higher mortality rates. So I guess I should put a forewarning for a lot of this presentation. It might be a bit triggering for some people, but I do want to show what avian influenza looks like for you guys out in the field, what you should be looking for in species. You'll find that often with highly pathogenic avian influenza, it's quite acute. So often it'll just present as sudden death. But if you do see signs, often it's neurological in birds. So this is an example of a Canadian goose with suspected avian influenza. They're really ataxic. They look drunk. They can't, struggling to right themselves, head tremors and that sort of thing. But that will progress quite quickly to death. On a post-mortem perspective, like I said before, it targets a wide range of organs. So you get these sort of pinpoint red lesions, and this is the stomach of the bird. And then also this is the pancreas here, and it causes really bad necrosis of that. So it has like this mottly sort of look. If you were to do it post-mortem, this is the spleen. It causes more necrosis through there. This is the heart. Around the heart, they'll get fluid. So it means that the heart struggles to contract properly and they get cardiac tamponade. And then also the lungs get really congested and edematous. And if you were to put it in a bucket of water, they would sink to the bottom. Normal lungs, they typically float at the surface. As I said before, the combs of chickens or that sort of thing, they get quite blue because of the respiratory distress. And then they get all of these sort of fluid within the abdominal cavity. Here are some examples of pre and post outbreaks of avian influenza in the northern hemispheres. This one up here, this is an island off Scotland, a colony of gannets, and you can see all these white dots are nesting birds, and that's pre and post an outbreak there. This is in Canada, similar again, a colony of gannets before and after. And then this is an example of, you've probably heard of the devastating impacts it had in South America, Argentina and Chile, mass deaths of elephant seals and sea lions along that coast. This is an example of what it looks like in your marine mammals. Similar to birds, they'll get respiratory symptoms, the really snotty noses, struggling to breathe, and then have neurological symptoms as well. So this guy here, he's got quite a big head tremor. And you can sort of hear a little bit of respiratory distress, quite a croaky sort of breathing. So what we look for, or classic signs in marine mammals, is they're similar to birds. Their lungs get quite overinflated and edematous, so full of fluid. So they'll kind of protrude through, and you get these sort of rib impressions from where they've kind of overinflated, and this is a normal color of lung here. This indicates a really accumulation of a heap of blood in there. Some of that could be a degree of post-mortem change, but typically that's what you'll see. Then they have, again, fluid around the heart, so that means that the heart is struggling to contract properly because of that compressive force of the fluid, and then you get fluid as well in the windpipe or the trachea. And then the brain itself, it's a bit engorged with congestion with blood, and then it's also a bit swollen as well. So HPAI, it's kind of tracked its way across the northern hemisphere and then come down through Central America to South America, sort of over the period of 2022, 2023 was when they were getting massive outbreaks along the coast, particularly through here, Peninsula Valdez, and further south along the Argentinian coastline. But yeah, as you can see here, I think it was in total about 32,000 deaths of seals, and then similar for sea lions as well. But yeah, elephant seals particularly were really heavily impacted. And then it has jumped across to the Falkland Islands in South Georgia and then through to the Antarctic Peninsula as well. And that's probably due to the distribution of large amount of scavenging bird species like skua. They feed on carcasses, they then go and die, and then someone comes and feeds on them, and so you get this sort of leapfrog effect. Even though they die very quickly, just the degree of scavenging that's happening or interaction between birds and seals. I mean, you think about sea lion colonies down in the subantarctic, there's always skua or giant petrel coming in and doing the cleanup of the dead pups or cleaning up the feces and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of sort of transmission between the two, all the different species. And then why are we so concerned about this region, and why is this probably a source of spread to New Zealand, is because, I mean, the whole Southern Ocean, there's not much land mass, so it allows a huge quantity of seabirds to travel in these waters, really rich feeding grounds, and then all of these subantarctic islands dotted across where they're breeding and raising chicks. So I went through and looked at where all the confirmed cases along the subantarctic islands since being the introduction to South America, so we know it's hit the Antarctic Peninsula. It's kind of, I'm struggling to find many evidence of it spreading across the Antarctic continent itself, and that's one of the big difficulties with field work, is it's seasonal. A lot of these areas are quite remote and hard to get to, so it may be further spreading than what we realise. And furthermore, a lot of these species are out at sea a huge amount of their lifespan, so we don't know the sort of losses that are happening out at sea. But what we can confirm is it has been present on the Antarctic Peninsula, obviously Falkland and South Georgia, but it's also spreading further out here. With the latest that I've heard of is Heard Island, which is one of Australia's sub-Antarctics that they've confirmed cases. So it hasn't taken long from 2023 to spread to here, and then our islands are just right here. So it's definitely creeping around, and honestly, it's not really a matter of if, just when it will hit here. So how does this apply to us? Our sea lion populations are mainly concentrated in the Auckland Islands. So you've got Figure of 8, Dundas, and Enderby Island are the main breeding colonies, with sporadic females also on the main Auckland Island as well. And then you've got Campbell Island as well, with a few colonies there. Then we have obviously our Rakiura population, and also the Otago Southland coastline as well. With our sea lions, they breed in quite dense colonies, and so you can imagine if one infected individual comes in, then there's high risk of spread to the others in that space. So that's mainly why I'm so concerned about these guys, is it's all our eggs in sort of one basket. It won't take much for one introduction to spread into a big outbreak. And just to highlight, this is what it looks like on Dundas Island. I mean, you've got piles of pups on top of each other. You've got females all cuddling in with warmth, and then you've got the odd males interweaving through that. So, I mean, we can handle a degree of pup losses, but if we start losing our breeding females quickly, that can be catastrophic for the population. What's being done? So at Massey, we have a partnership with both DOC and MPI. MPI obviously does the bulk work. If there's any die-offs of bird over 3, I think, then MPI should be notified, and then they'll send an investigator, or carcasses will be sent up to MPI to post-mortem, or at least swabbed at a minimum. Or if they're overrun, then the overflow comes to us at Massey. Or we also have a contract with the Department of Conservation that any endangered species that dies will be sent to us for a post-mortem. So we inadvertently get a lot of birds, and therefore if it's any seabird or that sort of thing, then we will be taking anal and coanal swabs. So that's obviously the back end and down the sort of mouth oral orifice. And then that's sent off to the lab just to make sure that it's not positive. But there is more active surveillance also happening in the sub-Antarctic. So field seasons that I've been down on, we've HPAI tested albatross, giant petrels, and the odd skewer. And that's pretty passive. Well, we do have to catch them, but it's just a quick oral and anal swab, and then we release again. So that's currently what is being done and will be continued to be done. It's important that we do that, just so if there is any detection, it's happened quickly before a massive outbreak happens. That being said, though, when an outbreak does happen, how do we prevent massive losses? Because the unique thing about New Zealand wildlife is obviously a lot of them are quite immunocompromised due to genetic bottlenecks, inbreeding, that sort of thing, from low populations that are slowly building up again. So we don't know which birds are going to cope okay and which ones are really going to be decimated. And the unique thing about HPAI is it's finding that some species are completely fine and others aren't. And it's really hard to predict what will happen in a New Zealand context. So DOC has been putting in a vaccine trial as a way of trying to protect species from mortality. The issue with the vaccine, though, is it needs 2 doses. So it needs a dose and then 4 weeks later, another booster. Otherwise, we don't get proper immunity. As you can see here, this is just sort of basic immunology. You give 1 dose. This is the level you want to reach. It will go down, and then you give a second dose, and it gives a much bigger response, and then you're protected. So there's no point really in just giving 1 dose. And obviously with wild populations, it's much hard. It's easy to give 1 off, but to catch it again and give a second dose 4 weeks later is near impossible, especially with winged creatures. So Doc has trialled a vaccine in some species. The vaccine is just a standard chicken one, and they've done it with more captive birds or birds with translocators that can easily be caught again. So species like kakapo, Pakake, the kaki, the shore plover, and then kakariki as well. And they've had good results. They're finding that there is an immunity that is being developed. So in the face of an outbreak, they could roll out a big vaccine program. But in terms of marine mammals, the bird vaccine won't work for these guys. But as you can imagine, any threat to agriculture, that's a much bigger driver for a vaccine to be developed. So because cows have started contracting avian influenza, they've developed a mammal vaccine in the US. It's not available here yet, but there is the thought that this could be given to sea lions as a preventative or protective measure. In the US, there's a place called the Marine Mammal Centre, and they have been instituting a vaccine trial on the Hawaiian monk seals because they are particularly at risk. They're quite localised in a small population, quite endangered. And I think they've been having good results from that too. Could that be instituted on New Zealand scale? Potentially. The issue is those you need captive population for this. In New Zealand, we currently don't have any captive marine mammals. And with the risk, the thing is when you vaccinate, then they have positive antibodies. So if you were to get a random wild animal show up and you tested it and it came back as having positive antibodies, you don't actually know if it's actually been exposed to a real virus or if it's been vaccinated. So until we actually have confirmed outbreak, there's a lot of barriers in actually instituting vaccine trials with these guys at this stage. That being said, they're still going to be planning for when it does eventually happen, how we're going to roll it out in an efficient manner. Yeah, so that's a quick summary of avian influenza. Hopefully you didn't find it too depressing. I think it's important as a general public that we have an awareness of what it looks like. So if you do see it out at the beach or that sort of thing, then you know not to approach. As vets, it's going to be a big thing because we're going to have a lot of sick and dying birds showing up at a clinic and you're not going to be able to do anything. Unfortunately, with avian influenza, once things catch it, euthanasia is generally the best outcome in this, but even then, you don't want to be exposing yourself given the zoonotic risk. So having an awareness and I guess holding your decision makers like government and that sort of thing accountable for how the response is going to pan out is important. But yeah, any questions? Yep.
So sorry, when you were saying about the using the Hawaiian vaccine, did they ever trial anything like that down in South America or anything?
Not to my knowledge, but yeah, I think the Hawaiian monk seal is the first sort of trial of it globally, but I could be wrong. Yep, Jimmy.
Just the sheer number of flat-cap gulls around Dunedin city. What do you anticipate, based on other countries?
Yeah, I mean the gulls in general, I would be quite concerned in the fact that they could be potentially really hit, the black bears and the red bills as well. Just again, dense breeding populations and they're kind of scavengers as well. So yeah, it'll be and again, we have no way of predicting how it's going to impact each one. Yeah. Leave them. Yeah. Yeah. Which is very hard because people see that and they want, places like rehabbers and vet clinics are going to have to be really quite stringent of turning people away. And that's often not, you don't, as a vet, you don't turn away a suffering animal, but it's going to be trying to navigate that. And there's a lot of vet clinics that are going to have to come up with a policy on how they handle that situation. Yeah. And doc as well, I imagine, because your helpline is going to be going off the rocks. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was really, I think, a bit concerning.
Yeah.
You showed that progression around the Southern Ocean.
Yeah.
It seems to be going in an easterly direction.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Has there been any prediction, or has there been any confirmation about which species have been responsible for it? And any predictions about when you think about the right or in the southern?
Definitely your kind of scavenging species, so skewer, giant petrels and that sort of thing have been having a big role in spreading it. Maybe not so much skewer, but giant petrels will be doing that. But again, like I said, it's sort of leapfrog across, and it might be bouncing up and down a bit off the continent. I don't know. I mean, again, it's such sporadic data that is coming out of some of these islands with field teams only going down intermittently. There's a lot we don't know really from the reading of the papers that I've been doing, at least. Yeah. No, they haven't, not to my awareness. I mean, they're active. It's been interesting. We get regular updates from them, and the number of calls they get to the incursion line has gone exponential, just because of that risk. And obviously, there's heaps of botulism and all these other common causes of big deaths of birds is now being treated as a big risk. Well, because it could be avian influenza, whereas originally they probably would have been ignored. But yeah, it's going up. So definitely people's awareness is increasing, but in terms of a timeline, I guess it's taken, 2 or 3 years to get to this point. So maybe but I guess the quantity of islands in this stretch here is less. So that might be an advantage to us. I don't know, but it's kind of looking like looking in a crystal ball, really. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's say it's made it to sea lions in the southern Antarctic. They survive because there's a bit of exchange between stuff and the main thing.
Yeah.
They survive long enough.
Potentially, yeah, potentially. And you'll get some individuals, I imagine, that are more resistant than others, or I don't know, in terms of carriers or shedders or that sort of thing. But generally, again, it's hard to predict how it will impact our sea lions, but if we're going anything off what's happened on this coastline, I think we should be extremely cautious. Yeah. And it will be, I don't know if Mel can comment on it, but what will happen once it does reach here? Like, will teams still go down, do you think? Or? Yeah.
So, yeah, basically, if it were detected on one southern Antarctic island, it would impact teams accessing other southern Antarctic islands, but it's just, there's a tiered response.
Yeah.
Once it would be, and once we suspect it, same as if anywhere else, 3 or more cases suspected, once it's avoiding more area.
Yeah, I mean, I guess treat it a bit like COVID too, a similar sort of response maybe in different tiers depending on the degree of the outbreak, but PPE is a big one, especially if you encounter any birds or marine mammal displaying that sort of symptom, or just completely stay away, don't even approach it. Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of time frame of this detection,
yeah.
Have any idea of how long those
Well, I mean, they're kind of a matter of a couple of months, really. Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's sort of situational, topography, how big the colonies are, what kind of other species are interacting. I mean, I think something we have to be aware of on the Otago coastline is obviously the high quantities of people on beaches and interacting with sea lions, should it happen. Yeah. Yeah. There'll need to be a big response, you know, and probably a combined response between DOC, Sea Lion Trust, all that sort of thing about messaging about, yeah. Yeah.
Developing the vaccine, saying but if you don't want to trial vaccines prior to driving, what's the reality of the time?
In terms of so
I've got a handful of cuts,
yeah.
So we could catch them a couple of
No, I know, and it would be quite feasible. I agree, and I think there's a important conversation to have is how that plan would look like once it did arrive here. Like from my understanding, once it gets here, then we're all good to vaccinate to a degree, but yeah, before that, there's a lot of red tape. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I imagine. I mean, I'm not talking on DOC's behalf. Like I can't speak to the. There will be, and like there's 3 vets within DOC at the moment that are currently mapping out that entire plan. So it is happening in the background. It's just yeah, I guess the rollout and making sure that all teams and that sort of thing can help out on that front. But yeah, like I think in Otago Peninsula context, it could be very achievable to do, given that we know each individual pup quite well, and even each adult. In the sub-Antarctic is probably a bit more challenging, but still probably achievable. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure in marine mammals. It'll come probably about, but usually it's a sort of, usually for most vaccine, you give a booster 4 weeks later and then another annual booster, and then it varies how effective that will last, if it's every 3 years or longer and that sort of thing. But don't quote me on that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there could be, but there's just a lot of red tape in terms of, you know, antibodies and whether or not they've been exposed due to the vaccine or due to actual exposure with the virus. Yeah, 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 and that's why if we had a captive population, then we'd known that we'd vaccinated that individual, and therefore, yeah, it would be much easier to keep on top of that because it's not a thing so much here. Then, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And what work on the postmortem? Yeah, like their whole respiratory, they've got really red muscle due to, like any diving bird or marine mammal, they've got really red muscle due to the extent of myoglobin in there, so oxygen store while diving. I just find that really cool. And their kidneys, they're like probably hundreds of little dog kidneys in one kidney, if you get what I mean. Like their ability to process, you know, salt and that sort of thing, due to obviously the high concentration of salt in their diet and that sort of thing. It's just, yeah, they just evolved really epically. Like I could give a talk on just the anatomy of sea lions. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of cool. I mean, their teeth are horrendous all the time, but yeah, they're pretty cool. Big fan. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Has there been any research into what the community looks like after an outbreak has gone through? So the animals
yeah.
who survive, are they gonna?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't gone that deep into the. That's a good question, Sean. I'll go and look it up. I imagine so. I mean, definitely, it's still pretty early, and I think they're still kind of chasing their tail a bit on understanding the outbreaks themselves, more so than actually how ones that have survived, how they're evolving, or if there's chronic shedding or that sort of thing as well. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for coming. Yeah, happy to have chats with people afterwards too if you have more specific questions. You're too afraid to ask in front of everyone.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you very much.